Isla Graham's first morning as an official guide at Edinburgh Castle began with the taste of drizzle on the wind and a school group clustering like restless starlings around her umbrella. She recited the introductory lines she had memorized. "Welcome to the rock that has guarded Scotland's heart for 900 years." But her own heart drummed quicker than the distant military tattoo. The drizzle thickened, the children's attention thinned. To steady herself, Isla pictured a single place that never failed to calm her, the Royal Library. Hidden on the upper floor of the Royal Palace, visible to the public only on special tours conducted by senior staff, she had peeked in once, just long enough to inhale the scent of ancient paper and wax oak. That smell was what pulled her through every rehearsal, promising that one day she might earn the key that let her linger among the shelves. Even mid-afternoon, after shepherding visitors through the Great Hall and Crown Room, Isla's supervising guide, Mrs. McKinnon, pressed a ring of jangling brass into her palm. "Last tour's cancelled. Storm's snarling its way up the Forth. Put the barriers up and lock the palace. And Graham, mind you don't dawdle where you've no clearance." Isla swallowed her "yes, ma'am," pulse flickering with possibility. Rain hammered the cobbles as she folded rope barriers and slid bolts into place. The key to the library glimmered among the others, its bow shaped like a tiny rampant lion. A single peek, she told herself. To stand before the case that held the Bannatyne manuscript, or the illuminated psalter rumoured to have travelled with Mary, Queen of Scots. Such a reward after a day of sprogs and selfies. Thunder rolled over the battlements as she slipped into the panelled corridor. The library door accepted the key with a grudging click. Inside, sconces glowed on low power, casting honeyed pools over carved bookshelves that rose 3 stories, their ladders hooked onto brass rails. Dust motes spun through the air like captive fireflies. Isla exhaled, her shoulders uncoiling. She drifted among the stacks, fingers hovering over leather spines stamped with gilt. The titles were eccentric. A bestiary of unnatural Ettrick, wailing songs for the unwailable, a treatise on shackles. Some shelves bore no words at all, only sigils pressed into the skin of the bindings. Isla's curiosity outpaced her caution. She reached for a ladder and began to climb toward a mezzanine where, she suspected, the truly rare volumes waited. Halfway up, the ladder jerked. A rung groaned under her boot. Before she could shift her weight, the metal bracket securing the ladder to its rail popped loose with a shriek. Books teetered. Isla flung herself sideways, landing on the mezzanine with an inelegant thud as the ladder clanged to the floor below. One book, dislodged by the impact, slid after her. She tried to catch it. Her fingertips grazed the cover. Then it skittered across the planks and tumbled over the rail. The silence that followed was not the silence of a dropped object. It was the silence of breath sucked out of a room. Isla scrambled to the edge and peered down. The book had exploded on the parquet, papery shrapnel strewn like feathers. Torn pages fluttered in a draft that did not exist seconds earlier. Ink seeped from the pieces, pooling thick as oil. As she stared, the ink convulsed, gathering itself into tendrils tipped with serrated black. The puddle heaved. 2 coiling arms rose, lattice-work of parchment visible beneath translucent obsidian. A smell of brine and scorched seaweed filled the air. A beak unfolded from the mass, dripping ink that smoked where it landed. The creature, the Kraken her grandmother used to warn her about in bedtime stories, turned eyeless attention upward. Something inside Isla's chest fizzed like struck stone. She backed away until her spine hit a shelf. Objects of legend cannot exist, she tried to insist, but the ladder's crash still rang in her bones. The Kraken extended another arm. Suction cups rimmed with miniature letters that rearranged themselves as they flexed, helplessly. Then it hauled itself toward the narrow spiral stairs that led to the corridor. Each arm left a smear of ink that burned through wood, hissing as it carved channels. Adrenaline snapped Isla out of paralysis. She clattered down the mezzanine stairs opposite, landing hard on the main floor. The Kraken had already reached the doorway, its bulk squeezed through in whispers of torn parchment. Instinct propelled Isla after it, past fragmented pages that writhed like wounded birds. She skidded into the corridor just as the Kraken battered open a window with a thunderous crack. The wind howled, rattling portrait frames. No, no, no! Isla lunged, but ink sprayed from a flicked tentacle, splattering her forearms in blotches that stung like jellyfish. She jerked back. The Kraken slithered over the sill and vanished into the storm, descending the castle rock with alarming grace. Lightning forked. For a heartbeat, Isla saw the creature silhouetted, an origami nightmare unfolding itself into power before darkness swallowed it. A rational mind would run for help, but rationality was already listing. She had loosed a monster on the city. Every second spent fetching a superior was a second the Kraken might reach the grass market or the cowgate. Isla inhaled the soaked air, tasting iron determination. She bolted down the spiral stair into the courtyard, rain plastering her fringe to her forehead. The Royal Mile glittered below, slick and crowded despite the storm. Fringe festival posters flapped from railings, buskers huddled under shop awnings, tourists swirled like bright confetti around the hub's Gothic spire. Isla spotted the Kraken halfway down Castle Hill, rippling over cobbles, leaving delirious serpentine strokes of ink that steamed in the rain. Pedestrians shrieked, clutching phones. Some thought it a stunt, others fled. She sprinted after it, coat streaming behind her, the Kraken's arms telescoped, anchoring onto facades, propelling it down the slope faster than any human runner. Ink bled into sandstone, blooming like malignant ivy. Where droplets struck umbrellas, the fabric disintegrated into strings of soggy letters. A bagpiper's drone died mid-note as his instrument melted into pulp. Isla's lungs burned, but guilt lent speed. Near the Witchery restaurant, she snatched a discarded festival leaflet and wrapped it around her stinging forearm. Paper. Ink. She needed to think as a librarian, not a sprinter. If a book bound the creature, perhaps another book could bind it again. The Kraken veered left at St. Giles, heading for the Mercat Cross, drawn maybe by the smell of printers' shops or the tidal pool of stories. Isla dodged startled onlookers, shouting warnings no one believed. She glimpsed the National Library's facade down George Ford Bridge and felt an idea flare. But she had no key, no authority, and the Kraken was already vandalizing the heart of Midlothian, splashing ink across the mosaic until the colours drowned. She skidded to a halt beside a souvenir stall. Racks of tartan-clad teddy bears and novelty kilts swayed. Among them hung a display of blank journals bound in faux leather. Isla tore one free, ignoring the vendor's protest. Using a ballpoint borrowed from a tourist, she stabbed the pen into the pages and began to write. She did not know the words. They wrote themselves, curling across paper in loops older than Gaelic. She heard them inside her skull, a chant, braided of tides and cephalopod whispers and the hush of reading rooms. The ink from the pen sparked midnight blue, darker than storm clouds. Pages filled. Isla tore them out, wadded them into pellets and hurled them at the Kraken. The first page stuck to a tentacle and sizzled. The letters wriggled like nettle stings. The Kraken recoiled, beak clicking. Isla threw another and another, pages fluttering like desperate doves. Each contact burned a white patch into the monster's surface, as though erasing it. But there were too many tentacles, too much ink. The journal emptied quickly. Isla backed toward the High Court, mind racing. She needed a larger text, something with authoritative weight. The law library behind her contained thousands of volumes, but the doors were locked. A boom split the air. From the north, Mrs. McKinnon barreled down the mile atop a maintenance trolley loaded with umbrellas and tour headsets, careening like a general commanding chariots. Her grey bun was a thundercloud in its own right. "Ram!" she barked. "What in the name of Bruce's blessed sword have you done?" "The books. They're prisons," Isla panted. "I dropped one. It broke. That thing got out." Mrs. McKinnon's eyes, sharp as glaives, flicked to the Kraken, now wrapping an arm around the Mercat Cross's unicorn. "Aye," she said, voice suddenly quiet. "I hoped never to see the day." Listen, lass, I ken how to fix it, but I'll need your young legs. From her coat she produced a skeleton key wrought in iron so dark it swallowed light. Parliament House, she said. The Advocates' Library holds the original register of the Acts of the Scottish Parliament. Ink, older than empire. If we can lure yon squid inside and read the binding statute over it, the parchment will drink it up. How do we lure it? Mrs. McKinnon kicked open the trolley's latch. Audio guide headsets spilled across the cobbles, plastic casings gleaming. We give it words. She thrust a bundled coil of headsets into Isla's arms, then seized a microphone from the trolley. Dear. Rain had fried half its circuits, but she jammed the jack into a portable speaker and flicked it on. Feedback screeched. Oi! Over here, ink bag, she roared, voice magnified threefold. She began reciting from Burns, volume cranked to earthquake. We, Sleekit, Cowran, timorous beastie. The Kraken twitched, tentacles quivering, letters on its suckers rearranged again. Listen, listen, listen. It released the unicorn, turning toward the sound. Mrs. McKinnon waved Isla forward. Lay those headsets in a trail to Parliament House. Pipe folk music, podcasts, whatever you can from your phone. Keep the chatter constant. Isla sprinted, dropping headsets like breadcrumbs, each broadcasting an excerpt from her audio guide app. Descriptions of Mons Meg, of the Stone of Destiny, of the Lang Siege. The Kraken followed, drawn by the feast of syllables pouring into rain-slick air. They reached the neoclassical facade of Parliament House. Mrs. McKinnon slammed the iron key into the lock. Wards tumbled open. Marble floors yawned inside, reflecting chandelier light. Isla darted in, neutralized squeaking. Together they hauled oak doors shut behind the Kraken as its bulk oozed through. The Advocates' Library lay beyond, a pillared arcade, gallery balconies lined with portraits of bewigged jurists. Its reading room smelled of dust and precedent. Shelves arched overhead in a dark wooden canopy, close enough to Edinburgh Castle's library to twist Isla's gut with guilt. Mrs. McKinnon guided her to a walnut cabinet at the centre. Fetch the register, she ordered, and steady though, rain dripped from her sleeves. Isla opened the cabinet. Inside rested a tome thick as a tombstone, chained to the shelf by wrought iron links. She hefted it, muscles trembling. The Kraken coiled in the doorway, tentacles tasting the bindings, soot-black eyes faceted from ink globes. Suckers smacked marble, leaving voids of letters that scuttled like spiders toward shadows. Stand in the circle, Mrs. McKinnon said. Inlaid in the floor was a compass rose, surrounded by Latin. Legibus vincimur, we are bound by the laws. Isla placed the register at the centre. Mrs. McKinnon flipped it open to a page whose vellum glowed faintly, text shimmering as though written by star ink. Read, the older woman commanded. Every word. They'll shape themselves to your tongue. She raised a hand, eyes meeting Isla's with fierce pride. Isla inhaled, tasting old parchment and ozone. The letters rearranged, aligning into modern Scots. She began. Be it enacted by the estates of this realm that any creature of ink or word, born of fear or fancy, shall be confined within pages sealed. The Kraken lunged. Two tentacles whipped forward, crashing against an invisible boundary at the circle's edge, splattering ink that hissed but did not cross. Isla's voice rose above the sizzling, reciting each clause. As she spoke, lines of gold pulsed outward from the register, tracing seams over the marble, up columns, across the vaulted ceiling. The library became a cage of light. The Kraken shrank with every sentence, tentacles dissolving into ribbons that fluttered upward like burnt newspaper ash. Its beak gaped, releasing a roar of many languages at once. Gaelic, Norse, Fees, a northern something older than both, before collapsing into a pool that quivered, then ossified into dry flakes. The gold light siphoned the remains, folding them into a single sheet that drifted onto the open register. When Isla read the final word, silence fell. broken only by her rasping breath and the drip of rainwater from their clothes. Mrs. McKinnon stepped forward, closing the register with reverence. The chain slithered back into place as though alive. "Good lungs, lass," she said, "and quick wits. Could have been a massacre on the mile." Isla wiped ink from her cheek, the sting gone. "I'm so sorry. I've destroyed a book and nearly the city." "Aye, you bollocksed it." Mrs. McKinnon's stern face softened. "But you also saved it. That counts double in my ledger. Now we must return the register before the advocates notice, and then deal with the mess outside." They unbarred the doors. Dawn glimmered beyond clouds, rain reduced to mist. The Royal Mile was a canvas of black brushstrokes, but already city workers splashed water from hoses, diluting ink into gutters where it spiraled toward the North Sea. Damage was mostly cosmetic. Stone could be scrubbed, umbrellas replaced. Islanders and Edinburgh folk alike had learned resilience across centuries of siege and storm. On Castle Hill, maintenance crews examined the Kraken's initial trail. The grooves carved into the cobbles had transmuted overnight into etched lines, forming an enormous map, constellations, sea routes, legends in languages long forgotten. Scholars would descend on the find, but the public would see only art, another mystery among the mile's many. Isla stood beside Mrs. McKinnon at the half-moon battery, watching sunrise blaze against rain-washed roofs. Exhaustion dragged at her muscles, yet her pulse hummed with awe. "I have so many questions," she said. Mrs. McKinnon chuckled, "and I've so many shelves to dust. So let's trade." She led Isla back to the library, repairing the broken mezzanine rail with a practiced tap of her cane that forced wood to stitch itself. From an upper shelf she retrieved a new volume, blank save for a cover embossed with a rampant lion identical to the key. "We need a prison for our misbehaving squid," she explained. She opened the volume. Its pages were pure white. With a quill of crow feather, she drew a single circle, then placed the sheet salvaged from the register at its center. The paper absorbed the sheet, edges vanished as if sinking into milk. Lines radiated until the circle sealed. "There," Mrs. McKinnon said, blowing gently to dry the ink. She slid the book onto a middle shelf, where the spine settled between a chronicle of phantom bagpipes and topographies of tartan dreams. Isla's gaze lingered. "How many monsters are in here?" Mrs. McKinnon replaced the quill. "As many as the world needs bound in silence. Some are nightmares the Vikings dreamed after too much mead. Some the products of modern fear." She tapped another spine. "Aeroplanes, used to unnerve folk. That's why there's a gremlin or two tucked away. We keep them asleep so stories remain stories. The Kraken was one of the oldest, and forgive my candor, sugar, toughest to wrangle." Isla felt both dwarfed and exhilarated. "You'll fire me, I assume?" "Fire you? I need an apprentice who's proven she can read binding script under pressure, and one with the humility to admit a mistake." She arched a brow. "Care to keep the key, or shall I look for someone else daft enough to take the job?" Joy flared like summer lightning. Isla accepted the key, its lying warm against her palm. "I'll dust every shelf in here," she vowed, "and maybe reorganize by threat level." Mrs. McKinnon laughed, the sound echoing among stacks. "Do that and buy heavier ladders." "We've much to teach, including how not to fall." Voices filtered from the courtyard, tourists gathering, cameras chirping. The castle prepared to open again, oblivious to how close it had come to catastrophe. Isla straightened her uniform, smoothed her hair with an ink-smudged hand, and followed her mentor toward the door. At the threshold, she paused, looking back at row upon row of bindings that whispered of slumbering leviathans, whisper wolves, and terror tides. She felt their restless dreams vibrating through vellum. With a silent promise, she bowed her head to them all, monsters and manuscripts alike. Outside, sunlight struck Edinburgh's spires, and the Royal Mile gleamed, freshly washed. Isla stepped into the morning, the lion key safe in her pocket, and a new story folded, for now, behind her lips.